Here's a requested review of The Truman Show. This is a film that most Jim Carrey fans label as his most Oscar-worthy performance. Carrey plays a man who from birth was adopted by a media mogul who builds a reality show around the fact that Truman doesn't realize he's living his life in a television series on a huge television set. His mother, wife, friends, co-workers, and neighbors are all actors, reading off cues from the producers of the show. The entire town that Truman lives in is a biosphere created for the specific purpose of making Truman believe that he lives in the real world. Up above in the clouds, the show's obsessive creator, named Christoph, watches Truman in a way that made me think of a stalker gazing at someone from a tree branch. Ed Harris does a chilling job with his role, as does Laura Linney, playing Truman's quote-unquote wife. Noah Emmerich plays Truman's supposed best friend, and Natasha McElhone plays a woman who had appeared on The Truman Show once before, but was written out of the show while Truman was still a teenager. Truman, at the time of the movie, is 30, and he has long harbored a deep passion to leave his hometown and go exploring. However, little coincidences continue to shut down his plans, and he eventually begins to wonder if there's a dark conspiracy behind it all. The movie was directed by Peter Weir and written by Andrew Niccol, who would later go on to write and direct Lord of War. The story has been criticized by people who find loopholes in this obviously manipulating story. We find it hard to believe all this stuff would be legally acceptable in the movie's universe, but the thing about this film is, it's an example of an extreme. Just like Natural Born Killers does, The Truman Show looks on people's obsession with the media, and what that media will do to keep the ratings high. Truman is a human being that is being imprisoned in this little world, whether he knows it or not. Imagine all those people who grow up next to him. Do they ever feel sorry for this guy? Or was one character's spontaneous outburst the only cry of protest in a sea of apathy? In many ways, the implications of The Truman Show are downright disgusting when you think about it. But that's where Niccol's writing comes into effect. The Truman Show does an amazing job pulling off this idea of reality within a TV setting. I've heard a theory that Christoph actually represents God, and Truman's struggle is in fact the struggle of atheists. And while I don't rule out that interpretation altogether, I think the main focus was meant to be on the effects of the media and the television shows. A lot of attention is given to the audience watching Truman night and day, and it's amazing to think how many different people of all ages watch Truman with such an endearing passion. Most of all, Christoph seems to regard him as a weird pseudo-son, but his actions are just so despicable. But what really works is how Christoph doesn't see himself as a monster. He sees himself as a kind parent who shelters Truman from the harsh realities of life, and instead provides him with an artificial life where he is happy. But in a series of moments that are sometimes painful to watch, Truman acquires more and more realization that he is not here of free will, and that he in fact is being held a prisoner. For such a famous comedian, Jim Carrey really could have been a dramatic actor with an equally successful career. I mean, his personification of Truman is impeccable. We really understand why people would want to follow this show, and why they would continually tune in, despite the fact that this man is obviously being lied to and held against his will. The Truman Show definitely holds up as a classic. It raises a lot of interesting questions about television, and why Jim Carrey was not nominated for an Oscar that year, I will never understand.